Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers. He's out there in the Pacific Northwest over there at 710 Seattle Sports. We're going to chat with him about what we've seen here in the first month and a half of the season, the divide between the haves and the have-nots in college basketball. We'll take a look at some of those Pacific Northwest teams, the ones that he's feeling good about, some of the good and bad surprises of the early portion of the season. Not really going to break down the games for Monday with him because it's a small card, but that said, in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on all 7 games that we've got on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters UM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions, everything is powered by Better. That is BETR on Better, and with Better, they're making it all the better to be able to dive in on some daily fantasy where jurisdictions allow. You're able to get in on some money lines and some spreads as well, but all you need to do is go to BETR.app. You type in the promo code of VSINPOD, VSINPOD. That gets you $10 free to be able to dive in. All you need to do is take a look at a player's stat line, determine whether or not they're going to go over or under that stat line, and boom, you are good to go. And we're all good to go to take a look back at everything that we saw in college basketball on Sunday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
In terms of top 25 teams on Sunday, there was only one in action, and Iowa State was laying 40-plus points against Eastern Illinois. They don't cover the number, but they cruised to a nice, easy 78-53 victory. For Iowa State, they win this game by 25 despite going 4 of 23. From three-point range, they dominated the turnover battle 18-12. They won the rebound battle 38-29. Milan Mimosilovic, he was able to supply the team with 18 points, and for this bunch in Iowa State, you had 7 assists out of Taman Lipsby. He did have 5 steals as well to only 1 turnover. Didn't necessarily give you a lot from the floor with 9 points, but nice, easy winner there. Just because they didn't cover doesn't mean that you should be overly concerned about Iowa State, especially with there being sparse crowds right now in college basketball. Maryland Eastern Shore looked like they were going to be able to cover 20.5 against Virginia Tech. That did not turn out to be, though. 82-53. Virginia Tech is able to pull away late, as this was a 13-point game with about 10 minutes remaining, and then Virginia Tech, they were just too hot from three-point range in this game. For Virginia Tech, they shoot as collective about 46% from 3, 11 of 24, as your main guy in this one was Nicolas Avadeas, 16 points, 7 assists to 3 turnovers, and for Maryland Eastern Shore, they lose the turnover battle 14-8, and they went 4 of 27 from three-point range. This is a Maryland Eastern Shore team that's one of the worst teams offensively in all of college basketball, and they scored as a collective only 53 points with nobody exceeding 7 points. That's something that you don't see every day. And in terms of other teams that were in action, you saw Iowa just completely dump truck Western Michigan. Western Michigan was down 52-16 at the half, 91-51 the final for Iowa. 14 of 31 from three-point range. Bennett Sturtz, your main man, at 13 points, but cheering was carrying. You also had Alvaro Falgarius and Brandon Housen off the bench give you 13 apiece. Cam Maniwu, Tate Sage, they had 11 points apiece as well for this Iowa bunch. They win the turnover battle 13-6. They win the rebound battle 38-36, and for Western Michigan, they won 11 of 22 at the free throw line. That's a great way to not be able to cover a game, and Temple had a dominant performance, as you did see quite a few big favorites come through. 95-67 the final. Temple was 15 out of 25 from three-point range, with Darren Ford going off for 24 points. For St. Francis, Pennsylvania, they lose the turnover battle 12-9, and they lose the rebound battle 30-29 as well. So nice clean domination there from a bunch that has had a little bit of a rough go of it. It's been a rough go of it for North Texas. They still have not exceeded 64 points in a road/shoot court game, but they do get the job done against South Alabama by a count of 58-57. South Alabama just continuing to dare teams to shoot it from 3, and North Texas overcomes shooting 9 of 40 from three-point range to get the job done. As for South Alabama, they actually win the turnover battle 14-11. They play even up on the glass 33-33, but for South Alabama, they go just 2 of 11 from three-point range as well. For North Texas, they were able to have a 22-point performance out of Deshaun Stevenson to be able to get that one done. The men of Troy continue to be a nice surprise here in the early part of the season. They're looking strong out there in the Sun Belt. They go on the road. They take it to UAB, 86-85 the final as for Troy, 14 out of 28 from three-point range, 5 of 10 from three-point range for both the Campbell brothers. Kobe Campbell had 12 points, Cooper Campbell, he had 14 points, and for the men of Troy, they overcome losing the rebound battle 33-29 to get the job done in this one. And UAB, they actually did heat up a little bit with their three-point shooting, 8 of 21 from the outside, so they do persevere, Troy does, and they do find a way to get the job done. Portland has a little bit of a home underdog. They win 88-78 over Kent State. Kent State has just been absolutely flying, and their defense has taken a massive setback, and for Kent State, they lose the turnover battle 24-16 in this game, and Cameron Williams, he was able to supply Portland with 20 points, so the Pilots, they are looking a little bit better this year. This team is not. I would say the Loyola Chicago might be the most disappointing team in all of college basketball this year, and I recognize what Kentucky is doing, but for the Loyola Chicago, they lose on their home floor to Chicago State 84-75. That's not good. For Loyola Chicago, 13 out of 45 from three-point range. He only attempted 22 two-point shots in this game. Miles Rubin, 10 points, 11 rebounds, and they didn't look to him at all down low, despite the fact that he went 4 of 4 on his shots. Don't know what they're doing there. And for Chicago State, they win the turnover battle 17-9. For Loyola Chicago, they win the rebound battle 45-36. So why they took 45 threes, the world will never know. But good win for Chicago State, 19 points out of CJ Ray and Landon Busey, the former coach over at Alcorn State, at Chicago State playing a little bit better. So we have to give a little bit of credit there, but boy, not good to say the least for Loyola Chicago, but very good for the Wake Forest offense. 111-73. They take down the Queens Royals as for Wake Forest, a sizzling 17 out of 33 from three-point range. Miles Colvin was 7 of 8 from 3 with 33 points. Omaha Blue, a former top 30 recruit that has just never really found it at the college level, 4 of 6 from 3. He had 16 points. For Wake Forest, they win the rebound battle 33-19. They win the turnover battle 13-10. Just nice, clean domination there from Wake Forest. You had another nice little home underdog in Fairfield to get the job done over Monmouth. This by kind of 73-65 for Fairfield. They have been cold with their three-point shooting. Heated up here, 8 of 17 from 3. Braden Sparks, he sparked the team for 17 points, and Fairfield won the rebound battle 40-31, and they win this game despite going 1 of 5 at the free throw line. You don't find that every single day, but hey, you know what? Whatever way you can to get the job done. Minnesota, they look to be finding their bearings under Nico Medved. They've been blowing out the bag competition. In the step-up games, it's been a little bit tough, so we'll need to take note of that, but 89-53, Texas Southern just gets completely dump-trucked as it was a Cade Tyson show. 38 points on 8 of 12 three-point shooting. Minnesota as a whole, 15 out of 34 from three-point range. Texas Southern, they lose the turnover battle 17-11, and for Texas Southern, it looks like it might be a very, very long year for them. For Buffalo, they were up 19 points at the half against East Carolina, and if you had Buffalo in this game, especially because they were in a lot of places like a 1.5, 2-point underdog, especially if you took those points with Buffalo, this is just all sorts of brutal. There was a point in the second half where Buffalo was up 50-30. They lose 73-70 as they upchuck all over themselves. East Carolina continues to not be able to shoot from three-point range, by the way. They went a nice hearty 4 of 20 from the outside, but that said, for East Carolina, they get the job done in the turnover battle. They win the turnover battle 13-7, and they had 31 points out of Jordan Riley. He pretty much put the team on his back in this one, so a nice quality win for an East Carolina team that is going to go nowhere out there in the American. But hey, you know what? They were able to get the job done on this day, so yay, verily there. For Missouri, they were about a 23 or so point favorite against Bethune-Cookman on a lot of lines. You just get there on the cover. Solid 82-60 win over a Bethune-Cookman team that we already saw them take Auburn to overtime this year. Bethune-Cookman did go 6 of 12 from three-pointers, still awaiting Dr. Bradley and a few others to gain eligibility as Jacoby Heady led the way with 15 points, but Jacob Cruz, he continues to cruise for this Missouri team. He was able to supply the team with 20 big points, and with this bunch, you also have Mark Mitchell be able to give the team 19 points for Missouri. They win the rebound battle by a count of 34-20, and they did a solid job forcing Bethune-Cookman into 16 turnovers. So Missouri finds a way there. You had Vermont be able to just barely find a way to be able to get a cover as well in a sloppy game against Merrimack. Merrimack looks to be getting back to their roots, 66-59 final in this one. As for Merrimack, they only forced Vermont into 7 turnovers. They just haven't been so great there. For Merrimack, though, they did hold Vermont to shoot 4 of 22 from 3. Merrimack continues to shoot horribly from 3 themselves, of 6 of 22 from the outside, and for Vermont, they won the rebound battle 34-28. Just not a lot of second chances to be had on either side, so Vermont in a little bit of a slog. They do find a way to persevere, and they seem to be finding their sea legs. Indiana State as a road underdog. They take down UW-Milwaukee 70-68 as Kemp Wagner was able to supply 18 points, 9 rebounds in that game. Coppin State just continues to be sorry, 107-77. They get dump trucked by Radford, and Coppin State actually held in there in the first half. They were down 2 points, and then they lose the second half 64-36 as Coppin State is looking a little bit better on offense, 12 of 26 from three-point range, but Radford went 16 out of 33 from three, with Dennis Parker putting up 53 points! 19 of 24 from the floor, 53 points in regulation. One of the biggest regulation scoring exposés that we've seen this decade. Like, that was absolutely wild, to say the least. That was not great for Coppin State, to say the least. And Boise State, they get the job done. They get a nice win over St. Mary's. As for St. Mary's and Boise State, they both went on 13-0 runs to start the game. But it was Drew Fielder who he was able to start off the game 10 of 17 from the floor. He did a rock solid job there. You've got two teams that have been relatively solid on the rebounding front. For Boise State, they just barely lose that rebound battle, but they do find a way. They get the job done against St. Mary's. And for USC, they do get the win, but no cover against Washington State. 68-61 the final. They were up double figures early on in this game, but really couldn't do a whole heck of a lot from three-point range. 1 of 13 from the outside. Chad Baker-Mazar, 11 of 11 at the free throw line, but 0 of 5 from three-point range. For USC, they did go 27 of 34 at the free throw line, so they did take advantage of a lot of those fouls, as I believe 5 different players for Washington State racked up at least 3 fouls, actually 6, and for Washington State, they did remain lively with Richard Varvers being able to supply 13 points, and for USC, they did win the turnover battle 13-10, but just the cold three-point shooting did not allow them to be able to cover this one. If you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, this is with 1 or 2 games outstanding. With the college basketball Sunday happening right now, the under rate is about 50.7% in all of college basketball. 864 unders, 840 overs. Meanwhile, favorites, they're hitting at about 51.2% on the spread, 868, 827, and 28. Meanwhile, if you take a look at what we've got in the last 7 days in college basketball, been a little bit of a lighter last 7 days, but the over is hitting at a rate of about 51%, 94 overs to 90 unders, with favorites having a little bit of a rough go of it, 86, 94, and 5 against the spread. So underdogs have been hitting about 52.2% over the last 7 days. That's what we're seeing trend-wise in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Coming up next, how about if we head out to the Pacific Northwest and chat with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports Radio on Coast to Coast with myself, Dave Peterson, and now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such an incredible job over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he's dialed in on a little bit of everything out there in the Pacific Northwest, as the Seattle Seahawks have been having themselves a very nice year, so he's been dialed in on that. You've got Seattle Kraken hockey that is going on as well, and so much more. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at A Kid from Kent altogether. And Curtis, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Greg, always happy to hop on with you. As we're nearing the end of non-conference play and nearing the start of the holiday break across college basketball. So we've got a good read on who some of the best teams are in the country right now. And I love that just what we kind of thought in the preseason may be a little bit different than what it is right now. And I just love what we have seen so far. It's been a highly competitive college basketball environment here to start the season. And I think there are some really, really solid contenders shaping up right now.
And I'm so glad that you lead off with that because I do think that there's been a divide between, I would say, like the top four and the top five teams. And then there's sort of like the teams that have lost to those top teams, like Gonzaga losing to Michigan. I would sort of be putting in that second tier. A team like a Purdue losing to Iowa State, I put in that tier as well. Have you been noticing sort of the same thing where it feels like you've got like that top four, top five in tier one, maybe like 4 or 5 teams in that tier two, maybe a few teams that are lurking, and then a pretty big divide between the rest?
Yes, I think right now a case can be made for about 3 teams right now. Maybe even 4 teams is the best team in the country. Arizona, Michigan, and Duke, I think right now are the clear-cut number ones.
With Iowa State, yep.
Iowa State is right there. Yeah, I think those 4 right now are the ones I look at and I say, these are teams that you should be paying very close attention to because not only are they winning, but it's the way they're winning. And it's how talented these rosters are and how deep their rosters are. All 4 of these teams have just been phenomenal to start this season. And look, I think UConn as well. I mean, their only loss was to Arizona, and it was a loss that UConn had down 2 starters in that game. So right now, there's probably, I would say right at UConn, maybe even Purdue is where I draw the line at sort of national title contenders. But that's not to take away from teams like Houston and Gonzaga. BYU, obviously, with A.J. Dibansa. I mean, he's looked really good. Louisville, I mean, they've played very well to start this season as well. But I would say kind of that line at UConn and Purdue, that's where I kind of make a little mark with my Sharpie and say, I'm going to need to see more from these teams below to thrust them into that national title picture right now.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of the rest of these teams moving forward. And when it comes to the Big Ten, I feel like they have just announced themselves that they are back and they are back in full force. I don't know if you feel the same way about this conference, but it just feels so loaded. And they're right now not necessarily in that picture of being like one of those top 10 teams, but Nebraska going on the road, knocking off Illinois was big for them. Oregon has looked a little bit sorry to begin the season, but they're starting to pick it up. Really, outside of like those bottom 3, bottom 4 teams, it just feels like night in, night out. It's going to be very, very competitive in this conference, to say the least.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it's not just Purdue, who everybody had as the preseason number 1 this year, but Michigan has looked like the best team. I know all the sabermetrics love what the Wolverines have done to start this season. I believe your people in Las Vegas have them as the title favorites right now. I think it's
yes,
like plus 450. So, yeah, the Wolverines very much the darlings of the college basketball world right now. But what the Big Ten has done to start this season, Greg, it's not quite what the SEC did last year, but it's kind of in that realm of like, okay, we need to really pay more close attention to what these teams are doing. I mean, heck, even Michigan State at number 9 right now, at least number 9 to start the week. You got Illinois, who Brad Underwood did not sound too happy with a couple of his players this week. So I kind of wonder.
Claiming guys are in Serbia right now.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going to help the Fighting Illini if guys are in Serbia right now, but should be interesting to see how that plays out over there in Champaign. But yes, I think the Big Ten right now is definitely to be taken seriously. And I think Michigan kind of leading that charge. And you and I have kind of talked about it where like the style of play of Big Ten basketball in years past just was not conducive to winning a national championship. I think what Michigan is doing right now is absolutely conducive to winning a national championship, and they're just bludgeoning everybody. They killed Gonzaga by 40 points. Now, that was the 3rd game of a 3-day tournament, so maybe Gonzaga just didn't have fresh legs in that one. But, I mean, 40-point victory over who many consider to be a top 10 team in terms of talent.
And then went to Kentucky, well, technically Nashville, Tennessee, and completely destroyed them.
Exactly. So, I mean, what Michigan has been able to do to start this season, if you're not paying attention now, I mean, I don't know. I can't help you there. But, yeah, I think the Big Ten is in a good spot. And, I mean, UCLA, they didn't get the win against Gonzaga in Seattle in a neutral site environment. Very pro-Gonzaga crowd. I think they have the talent, too, to be probably a second weekend team in the NCAA tournament. I don't think they're going to be a Final Four team this year, but I think this Big Ten right now is really special. And let's hope that Nebraska ball can get their first NCAA tournament win in school history this year. The only Power 5 program who does not have an NCAA tournament win. So let's go Nebraska. Let's go Cornhuskers. Let's see it this year.
And this might be their year, as I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of them as well. And Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, he's joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I really do feel like when it comes to biggest surprises in all of college basketball, Nebraska is one of those teams that's towards the top of the list. Now, I feel like you can have a few others in there as well. Like, I think Seton Hall has to be a top 5 team for me in terms of most pleasant surprises because everyone picked them dead last in the Big East. I thought that it was going to be a really bad year for them, and thus far it's been rock solid. But who are a few other teams that are standing out to you that you just have been surprised, whether that be to the positive or the negative, in terms of what they've done thus far this season?
Well, one team that I'm looking at, Greg, and it's a team out west, and it's a program that has had a new head coach darn near every year, and they continue to just chug right along and win big and continue to just stack wins year after year. And that's Utah State. I mean, 9-1 to start the year. They're a team that is definitely one that it just does not matter who is running that program. It does not matter what is going on there. The Aggies, for whatever reason, just get the job done year in and year out there. It's a really, really great program that they've got going on there. Shout out to them. How about, teams like Virginia? I mean, 9-1 to start the year. What about the Cal Golden Bears? I know that they have not played a ton of good teams to start this season, but 10-1 is obviously impressive. Mark Madsen has that program pointed in the right direction. I would say, good win over UCLA, good win over Utah. Their only loss was 3 points to Kansas State earlier this season. They've got a good test coming up against Louisville coming up on December 30th. That's going to be a home game. Louisville having to make the cross-country trek all the way out to Berkeley. Can't imagine the crowd at Berkeley is going to be too feverish. That's not an arena that gets packed out normally, or at least not in recent years. But I think that's going to be a good test for the Golden Bears this year. I'm very interested to see what Mark Madsen's able to do in year number 2 in the ACC as well. There's going to be opportunity, especially once they get to conference play. I mean, look, they get Duke and North Carolina in their building this year, and they don't have to make a return trip to either the Dean Dome or Cameron Indoor. That is some pretty nice scheduling for the Golden Bears this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be fascinating to see what we get out of Cal moving forward. They've been a nice surprise. And I will say a lot of those teams in the ACC have been a nice surprise as well. I recognize that Syracuse loses that game to Hofstra. I am not convinced that Hofstra is a bad team at all. I actually think that they're a solid team. You still shouldn't be losing that game. But with the ACC, maybe they don't have a lot of firepower in terms of like top 10 teams outside of Duke, along with Louisville, but North Carolina, SMU, Virginia, NC State. It just feels like, and maybe this is a little bit of a demeaning term, but what has been a very sorry ACC is much, much less sorry this year, aside from you, Boston College. Sorry, Boston College.
Shout out to the people in Chestnut Hill for sticking in there.
If you're still a fan of Boston College, I salute you, because this has been bad.
It's been bad for a while now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they got 4 ranked teams right now. It's weird because growing up, that was always the conference in college basketball. And to see where it has kind of fallen to in the last few years, it's bizarre. I mean, Duke has obviously held up their end of the bargain, and North Carolina, for the most part, has done the same. They've had a couple of down years here and there, but nothing quite to a bottoming out like we see at the bottom of this conference. But I think the ACC has a lot of programs that can make some noise. And I think if the ACC wants to do it the way the Big 12 did, where they just kind of leaned into it saying, you know what, I get that football revenue is what drives the engine at every single school across Division I athletics. But why not just make us the best basketball conference again? Like, there are definitely a ton of schools out there in the ACC that you look at and you're like, why are they not better than what they are in basketball? I look at like Notre Dame, Syracuse, obviously being one where historically they've had, they're kind of on the edge of being a blue blood in college basketball. It's been a few years though since they have actually been really good, and obviously off to a kind of a 500 start this year. That's not going to get there. But look at Wake Forest, a program like that where you're probably not going to be able to compete with, the schools in the SEC who are in your backyard for the most part for a lot of these schools in terms of getting the football talent there. But hey, why not the basketball talent? I mean, the South is obviously a hotbed for great basketball talent. And, these schools have some deep pockets. I think the ACC is one conference, Greg, that I look at and I'm just kind of like, why haven't they been better than what they are? And maybe they just kind of lean into it the way the Big 12 did a couple of years ago during realignment when Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, was like, look, this is the best basketball played outside of the NBA. Like, that was a really bold statement of him to say, but consistently the Big 12 has been the most competitive conference over the last, couple of years post, massive realignment. And, crazy for a commissioner to say that, but it kind of felt like the ACC was that conference for a number of years. And I hope one day we see it, because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the college basketball that, we all grew up loving, where it was like, okay, the ACC is going to roll through the ACC Big Ten Challenge. I mean, that doesn't even exist anymore. So hopefully the ACC can get it right. I mean, obviously Duke is doing what they're doing. North Carolina's doing what they're doing. And, great to see, Pat Kelsey, right the ship at Louisville, because that's an important program, too, to the ACC.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of these teams moving forward, as Curtis Rogers, who does such a great job over at 710 Seattle Sports, he's joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly you're out there in the great state of Washington, and I know you're very dialed in on a little bit of everything that we're seeing out in terms of the West Coast part of the country. And just what have you made out of some of these teams with the mid-majors like the Mountain West? Because it feels like it's a little bit down with them this year. The Big West has been a little bit up and down as well. And I think that we both had very high expectations for these West Coast teams to begin the season. And Gonzaga losing that game to Michigan, they've still been very rock solid. But it feels like outside of Gonzaga and Washington, it's been a lot of teams that need to pick up the slack a little bit more, aside from maybe like a Colorado State. But I just have been a little bit discouraged by what I've seen out of the Mountain West thus far this season.
Yeah, the Mountain West is one. I mean, you look at the bottom of that conference right now, it is bad. Fresno, San Jose State, UNLV. UNLV, I don't understand why they just cannot consistently put together a winning product. And Air Force Service Academies, really hard to win at those, especially, with the height requirements to get into those places. You're running rosters with guys who are, at maximum like 6'6". But yeah, I think Utah State right now, Colorado State, New Mexico. Good to see Wyoming back and being competitive again as well. So, yeah, the Mountain West right now, I mean, I can't see it being more than maybe like a 2-bid league at this point. The West Coast Conference, I think outside of Gonzaga, maybe St. Mary's, I don't think you're getting another team in. Shout out to Seattle U, getting off to a pretty good start this year, 8-2 right now. I think they're in a good spot to at least wreak some havoc there. One team that's kind of disappointing to me, Greg, in the WCC is San Francisco, just 6-5 right now. I thought they were going to be a little bit more competitive. Santa Clara 8-3, about what I expected out of them. But yeah, I think right now, the West Coast, it's been a slow start, and it's a little disappointing to see, especially because there's such good basketball being played out here year in and year out. It obviously is going to get, knocked, because no team, west of Baylor has won a national championship since 1997 out here in the West Coast. People will obviously hold that over what West Coast Hoops has done this season and be like, well, here we go again. But I still think there's a lot of great hoops to be played out here. I think there's improving programs. I mean, especially a team here in my backyard, the Washington Huskies. You look at what they have been able to do, picking up a win over a ranked USC ball club. Yes, they did lose to Colorado, and they did lose to UCLA back-to-back to end November to start December. But, I mean, Hannes Steinbach is a fantastic player. He is probably going to be a lottery pick, averaging well over a double-double. Wesley Ade, Zoom Diallo. This is a really fun ball club. They've got a lot of talent. And I think they have their best basketball ahead of them. I think they're just feeling everybody out. They've got a big test coming up on Friday against Seattle U. That game's going to be played at Climate Pledge Arena. And look, they've got some revenge on the mind right now, because Seattle U was able to clip them last year. So it should be interesting to watch. And then they've got Utah to wrap up the year before they head out on the road to start their Big Ten play. That's going to be a tough stretch to start Big Ten play at Indiana, at Purdue, at home against Ohio State. You've got the Michigan schools coming in, at Nebraska, your arch rival in Oregon, at Illinois. They're going to be battle tested to start. Things ease up at the very end, but it's going to be a tough go of it. But I think Washington right now is better equipped in 2025, 2026 to handle that than they've ever been, really over the last 7 years or so since they last made the NCAA tournament. Hannes Steinbach is a guy you want to absolutely tune in for if you get the chance.
Yep, he has been must-see television. He has been absolutely tremendous, and it is going to be interesting to see how these teams are able to improve, if they do it all, towards the back half of the season as well. Want to see a little bit more of the Mountain West. It's been a little bit discouraging there, but we've been seeing a lot of great basketball this year. And Curtis, I know you're doing a great job of covering it all. You cover a little bit of everything over there at 710 Seattle Sports, whether that be football, basketball, hockey, we name it, you do it. You let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we're busy every single day here in the great Northwest, covering it all, covering the Huskies, covering the Cougs, covering Gonzaga. We've got our eye on the coaching carousel in college football as well, especially with Wazoo hiring a new head coach. And who knows what the future of Jed Fish looks like in Washington as well. So there's just everything going on right now here. And then, like you mentioned, the Seahawks, the Kraken. It's so much fun. Baseball, hot stove. Everywhere you look, there's something for everybody. And Greg, always happy to hop on, talk some college ball with you. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Curtis is doing such an excellent job taking a look at this great game of basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So a big thanks to Curtis for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast that I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by Curtis Rogers, who does such an incredible job over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, which we've got two games involving bigger conference teams, Niagara versus VCU, Wyoming versus South Dakota State, and then everything else is going to be at the bottom in time order. So let's get things started with 891, 892. It is VCU playing host to Niagara. Niagara is a 29.5 point underdog with a total of 141.5, and I'm willing to lay with VCU. I did set them as a 31.5 point favorite. It's a VCU team that has been solid with their offense, maybe not lighting the world on fire, 80th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but boy, oh boy, it is a struggle for Niagara right now. They're currently 335th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're super slow. They are clocking in right around about 297th in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis, while being outside the top 340 in terms of total possessions per game. Just all sorts of bad with this team as they lost everything except for Justin Page for many seasons ago, and Page is able to give you 11 points, 2.5 assists per game, but typically, Niagara is based around three-point shooting. They are shooting as a collective less than 30% from three, and they're a bottom 20 team at guarding the three-point arc. They're allowing teams to shoot 38.8% from three-point range, and they just don't grab any second chances. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of the missed shots. They result in an offensive rebound, and you have one guy on the roster with over 3.5 rebounds per game. That'd be Josiah Sabino, who's been able to give you 6 points, 4 rebounds per game. They just don't stand any chance against a VCU team where it's been a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of collective. You've got JD Tracy, who he comes over from Oregon. He's been for much of the season really the main scorer. He's down to number 2 with about 12 points, 2.5 assists per game. As Terrence Hill has actually been the top scorer with about 12.5 points per contest, shooting 50% from 3, but then you've got someone like a Nick Lewis, who as a freshman gives you about 10 points, throws in there a steal and a half per contest. Laser Djokovic, 6'10", little bit of a combo player, shoots 32% from 3, 11 points, 5 rebounds per game. The team just does a really good job as a collective. Brandon Jennings, Barry Evans, combining for 17.5 points per game between the two of them. Team does a pretty solid job being a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that Niagara is just going to have a tough time here. VCU does allow opponents to shoot about 34% from 3, but Niagara's just not knocking down their threes, and I think that the turnovers that VCU is able to create helps you out with the under. So I set my total 139.5, like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 31 with VCU. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 893, 894, Wyoming and South Dakota State do battle from the Sanford Pentagon, with Wyoming a 4.5 point favorite and a total of a 150.5. I set a total for 141.5. I do like the under. You do have a South Dakota State team that's really dialing back their tempo, and a Wyoming team that is cranking it up. For Wyoming, they're currently in terms of total possessions per game now in the top 80 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for South Dakota State, they're about 253rd in terms of total possessions per game, but both teams have been rock solid on the glass. You've got a Wyoming team that is right now 48th in terms of defensive or rebound percentage. Meanwhile, South Dakota State is 8th with this regard. Opponents are grabbing just 21.6% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. even though this is in the state of South Dakota. I did set Wyoming, though, as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Wyoming is doing a better job of generating turnovers. They become a top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do a solid job with their offense. This is a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Top 110 in terms of 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Not necessarily explosive, but at the same time, just solid all the way around. Don't have a single guy for Wyoming that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but they just do a nice job as a collective. Mataj Bellick has come in, been able to give the team about 4 boards per contest. You've got someone like a Nasir Meyer, who I really like, 12.5 points, 2.5 assists, 4.5 boards, shooting over 40% from 3. Lolland Walker, the Eastern Kentucky transfer, he's been able to give you 4 assists, 4 boards, 14 points, not necessarily shooting it well from 3, but Caden Bennett from Quinnipiac, he's done a nice job as well with about 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, so the switchability has been very big. And for South Dakota State, though this defense is still very solid, they're not allowing a lot of second chances, the offense has taken a little bit of setback in year number 1 under Brian Peterson, great name by the way, but that said, they're really looking to a trio of guys who give you between 11.5 and 12 points per game, Joe Saylor, Damon Wilkerson, and Jaden Jackson, but now they're shooting less than 33% from 3. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30% from 3, and they've really kicked things to the outside. Opponents are taking over 46% of their shots from 3-point range, and Saylor shoots 37.5% from the outside, but for South Dakota State, they are outside the top 225 in terms of ball security with about 12.5 turnovers per game. They're not allowing a lot of second and third chances, but they are having a little bit of a tough time inside, outside the top 150 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Wyoming is very much looking to knife the ball down low, and while this is a bunch in Wyoming that really doesn't have that 5+ rebound per game guy, it's not like this South Dakota State team has a ton of size. Kellen Gary has been able to give you about 5.5 boards, 9.5 points per game, and for Damon Wilkerson, he has been able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. He leads the team with that regard, but I do think that Wyoming is just the more balanced team in this circumstance. I do think that they're going to generate some turnovers in a game that I think is going to see some possessions, but just a lot of dead possessions. Set my line at 5.5. I'm going to lay with Wyoming, and I'm in on the under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-527, 306-528. Southeast Louisiana is playing us East Texas A&M. East Texas A&M, a 4.5 to a 5.5 point underdog. Totals anywhere between 137.5 to a 140.5, and I said East Texas A&M as a 2-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. East Texas A&M last year was well outside the top there in terms of the 3-point shooting percentage. It's not that they're great this year, but they've ascended to about 240th. They're shooting about 31.5% from the outside. A big reason why the Tarleton State transfer in Ronnie Harrison, he's been able to elevate this team with 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, and this unit has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job in terms of generating turnovers. For East Texas A&M, top 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and both of these teams are pretty equally awful in terms of their offense. For Southeast Louisiana, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team is clocking in 317th. East Texas A&M, they're 319th, and for Southeast Louisiana, they're shooting 25.5% from 3-point range, but the big thing is for Southeast Louisiana, they're also not doing a good job of guarding the 2. Southeast Louisiana is about 273rd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so I do think that East Texas A&M going to do a good job down low. Now, for East Texas A&M, they're not giving themselves any sort of second chances whatsoever. They're outside the top 340 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Not a single guy give you over 5 rebounds per game, though. The St. Bonaventure transfer, Michael Florian, 6.5 points, 5 boards. He's been able to do an okay job there, and then you'll be able to get a little bit out of G&I Hunt, who's been a do-it-all player that, he's so old, he was on that Oregon State team that went to the Elite 8 back in the day. 8.5 points, steal and a half, 4.5 assists, 4.5 boards per game. He's probably going to be the most versatile player in this game for Southeast Louisiana. They just don't have the same guys down low that they had a season ago. Losing Brody Woodbury has really taken it out of them, as they right now have only one player that's giving you over 4.3 rebounds per game, Isaiah Gaines, who's been around the block, 10 points, 6 boards. He was on that Florida Atlantic team that made the Final Four, but Jeremy Alizi is right now the lone double-figure scorer with 12 points per game. He right now shoots 5.9% from 3, and it's just pathetic what we are seeing out of this team. Each other top 5 scorers shoot less than 28% from 3-point range. CJ Booker has actually shot 40% from 3 with about 5 points per game, but that's about it for this squad. Now Southeast Louisiana, top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, outside the top 250 in terms of their own ball security, so lots of sloppiness to be had in this game. You've got an East Texas A&M team that's not necessarily going to be playing at a sluggish pace. You have a Southeast Louisiana team that they are very content to be playing at a very slow pace. Southeast Louisiana is about 289th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. East Texas A&M more around about 116th, but in a game with a bunch of rudderless offenses, I do think that this is going to be a slog. Semi-total 136, like the under, and with East Texas A&M, set them as a 2-point favorite. I like them on the money line. 3-6, 529, 3-6, 530. Wofford is on the road against Gardner Webb. Gardner Webb, an 8.5 to a 9.5 point home underdog. 153.5 is the total, and I set a total here of 152. I like the under. I just flat out don't think that Gardner Webb is going to do their part with this total, and they're doing everything wrong right now. Gardner Webb is 338th in points scored on a per possession basis on offense, 363rd in points allowed on a per possession basis, and 323rd in terms of rebound percentage, and they lost to non-Division I North Greenville earlier this year. Yeah, I mean, man, Jeremy Luther, he had a tough job ahead of him when he took the job 2 years ago, but this is just bad. They finally got their first win of the season over non-Division I Brevard, 77-63, and the defense has been a little bit more respectable here recently. You've got Spence Sims along with Jacob Hogarth, who are both giving you about 11 points per game, but I have yet to find a main facilitator. Nobody on the team is giving you over 2 assists per game. When Gardner Webb was really at full force, they did a nice job down low, and they're just not doing that right now for Gardner Webb. They are really giving it up from the outside. As a matter of fact, in terms of both opponents, 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage are outside the top 340 with both regards. But again, with this Gardner Webb team, because they don't have a point guard, they're outside the top 310 in terms of their ball security as well. And Wofford is not necessarily lighting it up. They've become a mid-tempo team, and Gardner Webb is actually a top 125 team in terms of total possessions per game. They've been dialing it back a little bit more last few games, but for Wofford, they're 70th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They cause no turnovers whatsoever on defense. They're outside the top 310 with that regard, but you do have Kamari Holmes, who's done a nice job, giving you about 2.5 steals, 5.5 boards, 18 points per game. He's been a nice go-to guy. Chance Watley has come in to shoot 41% from 3. I expected a little bit more out of Caden Vasco, the transfer from Central Michigan, only about 6 points, but he has given you about 3.5 assists per game. It's a Wofford team that they themselves are well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I mean, for this Wofford team, at the very least, they're a top 200 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. They're not getting completely decimated on the glass, and right now for Gardner Webb, they're just flat out doing nothing right. I wish I could put it any other way, and I do think that as a result, this Wofford team gets the job done against a very sad and pathetic Gardner Webb team that doesn't hold up their part with their total. 152 is what I set my total at. I'm in on the under, and with Wofford made them a 14-point favorite, I'm willing to lay the number. 3-6, 531, 3-6, 532. North Alabama is on the road against Alabama A&M. A&M is a 1.5 point home underdog. 135.5 is the total. Made a total of 142. I do like the over. You do have two slow and controlled teams here. As for North Alabama, they're playing at their slowest tempo under the Tony Pujols era, 294th in terms of total possessions per game. Alabama A&M is 267th, but I mean, both of these teams have been equally as rough on defense. Alabama A&M 252nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. North Alabama is 265th, but I mean, the reason why I did set North Alabama here as a favorite, and I'm going to be willing to lay it, I made them a 6-point favorite, is that I do think that they're going to be able to dominate the glass. You've got a Alabama A&M team that's 313th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. North Alabama more around country average, about 167th, and a big reason why is Cornelius Williams. He's averaging a double-double, 13.5 points, 10.5 boards, a little bit over a block per game. North Alabama really just not shooting it from 3 the way that they did last year. You've had Kevin Kovic, who's been able to give you 13 points, shoots 35% from 3, and Darkon King has been off the bench shooting 45.5% from 3, but on low volume. He's only taken like 10 or 11 threes this year. He's been able to give you about 4.5 points per game, but Dante Bacchus has been able to supply 14 points, a steal, 6 rebounds per game, so he's been solid there. Now, North Alabama is not a team that's really going to be forcing the issue. They are outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and it is going to be a situation of something's got to give because Alabama A&M not great at taking care of the ball outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. On the offensive side of things, they're guarding the 3 well, but with regards to 2-point shooting defense, they're outside the top 250 with that regard, and they're just not doing a great job inside themselves. They're a bottom 15 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, which is an issue because they're in the top 40 in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. You've had Sammy Pacisis come over from the America East, 12 points, 3.5 assists per game. He's been solid there, and Katavius Dozier, he's one of the guys that came over with Dante Jackson, the former coach of Grambling. He brought with him Dozier, PJ Eason, James Graham, a lot of different guys, and Dozier is that top guy with 13 points, but he's only shooting about 30% for 3. Graham has been versatile, shoots about 35.5% from the outside. He's supplying 7.5 points per game. Easton has been able to give you about 7.5 points per contest as well. And for James Graham, has dealt with a little bit of injury. He's been back out there on the floor in the last few games, but has been a little bit limited as he has scored 3 points or fewer in 2 out of the last 3 games. I do think that the Alabama A&M defense is going to be giving up quite a bit here, and they don't really force the issue themselves. They are outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and I think that those second and third chances for North Alabama allows them to get the over and get the job done. Set my line at 6. I'm willing to lay with North Alabama, and I do like the over. 306-533, 306-534. McNeese is going to be on the road against Houston Christian. Houston Christian, a home underdog of 12.5 to 13.5 points, 138.5 to 139.5 is the total. Set my line at 13.5. So at a 13 or less, I'm willing to lay with McNeese. McNeese is doing an impeccable job of generating turnovers on defense, number 1 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They generate a turnover on 25.8% of possessions. And for McNeese, they did bring back a few guys from the Will Wade era, Javon Garcia being one of the main men, 13 points, pair of assists per contest. He's been shooting 35.5% from 3. DJ Turn It Up Richards has been able to shoot 47% from 3-point range. This is not a holdover, but Larry Johnson, he and the Tulsa transfer and Tyshawn Archie, they're combining for about 30.5 points in the backcourt. You don't have a single guy for this McNeese team that's giving you over 5 rebounds per game, but they still have been a top 75 team with regards to rebound percentage as well. They're grabbing about 13.5 offensive rebounds per game, and I think that they dominate a Houston Christian team that's really looking to play slow. Houston Christian about 345th in terms of total possessions per game, and for Houston Christian, they are 298th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in their home games. So they've had their issues there. A little bit of it has been due to injury, as I know that Elijah Brooks was dealing with it towards the beginning part of the season. In the 6 games that he's been back, 14.5 points per game, and then you do have Kylan Green who's shooting 36.5% from 3. He's playing the team with 12.6 assists per contest, but this is a Houston Christian team that they commit about 11.5 turnovers per game. In terms of turnovers per possession, they're about country average. Not bad, not amazing. They've been a top 150 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. They are really giving it up from 3, though. They're allowing teams to shoot over 38% from 3. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. And with this McNeese team, they are a team that plays a relatively middle-of-the-road tempo, about 221st in terms of total possessions per game. Houston Christian are actually more like 347th. I think that this is going to be a slow and controlled game with a lot of dead possessions with the active hands of McNeese, and then you've got Gawari Duel doing a little bit of everything off the bench for McNeese. I think it's just too much for Houston Christian in this spot. Willing to lay up to 13 with McNeese, and I'm in on the underside by total 131.5. We're wrap things up with 306-535, 306-536. TCU hosts Incarnate Word, and the Word is a 17.5 point underdog. 145.5 is the total. Set a total of 141. I'm in on the under. TCU is a relatively up-tempo team, about 100th in terms of total possessions per game. Incarnate Word is not. Incarnate Word is 326th in terms of total possessions per game, and for Incarnate Word, this has been a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they haven't quite been the same team when they've been away from home. They're shooting about 38.1% from 3-point range at home in a road/neutral court environment. That does go down to about 33.1% from 3-point range, and TCU, a relatively pedestrian offense, about 139th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I could only set them as a 17-point favorite. So at 17.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points. You've got an Incarnate Word team that's not really going to fight for a lot of second and third chances. It's not going to generate a lot of turnovers, as you've got pretty much dueling opposites. You've got an Incarnate Word team that's been very efficient on the offensive side of things. They are 343rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for TCU, not necessarily a great offensive team, but in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are currently 19th in all of college basketball. And when it comes to TCU, I do think that they are going to be able to do a very good job on the boards here, as for TCU, it was a little bit mix and shake to begin the season, but now they've been able to have David Punch do a nice job of being that top guy, 13.5 points, 7.5 boards per game, and Brock Harding is filling out good, clean offense. He's giving you 6 assists, 2.5 steals per contest, 7 points per game, not necessarily a great 3-point shooter. Micah Robinson and Jaden Pierre have been those main outside shooters. Robinson, 39.5% 3-point shooter with about 9.5 points per game. Pierre, 11.5 points per game. He shoots about 44% from the outside, and with this TCU team, they have been really good at generating turnovers. A top 15 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so in a game that should already be slowed down with Incarnate Word style, I do think that you get a lot of dead possessions here, and for TCU, to their credit, they've been really nice in terms of not allowing second and third chances, top 100 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. I do think that Incarnate Word does just enough to be able to hold in here, though. Again, TCU not necessarily stunning you on offense, and additionally with Incarnate Word, the backcourt has been good. Davion Bailey and Todd Shavosky have been able to combine for about 39 points per game between the two of them. They've been able to shoot in that neighborhood about 37% from three, and I know that Davion Bailey was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards the back half of November. He should be all good to go in this one. Harold Woods gives you good versatility, 9.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. It is an Incarnate Word team that they themselves have been a top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Their big issue has been giving it up from three. Teams are shooting about 34.5% from the outside, and to the credit of Incarnate Word, they have been able to shoot it quite well from three, but much of that has come at home. When they've been away from home, it's been a little bit of a just difference for them, and I do think that TCU generates turnovers, but I think Incarnate Word does just enough on the defensive side of things to hold within this number. So mine at 17, I had a 17.5. We'll take the points with Incarnate Word, and I do like the under as well, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Seeps, now part of the VSiN family podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry CM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast with picks and analysis on every game, every day, so I will be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.